Dhamma greetings. This is Ayya Dhammadinna, I'm a Buddhist nun and Candana Bhikkhu's one of his students. As you're about to watch a Dhamma talk by Bhante, please note that he's a wandering homeless monk and he doesn't have regular support from a Buddhist community. So he lives thanks to your donations. So if you are benefiting from Bhante's work, please consider making a donation via the link that is provided. Thank you.
It is very important to listen to these discourses of the suttas in a meditative approach, with a mind that is still gliding, shall we say. In meditation. And that's one of the reasons why, if not the primary reason why, I always have us start a discourse with a bit of meditation. But in listening to this discourse, you may just be continuing to sit with your eyes closed, if you will. But continue to have that state of openness, trust in allowing the mind to be restful, but noticing any agitation that might arise, that might happen, maybe a sound coming from outside or something that you hear me say or speak from the suttas that you might or might not agree with, or it reminds you of some things. You're there to observe whatever's happening in the mind. And the Dhamma then has a chance to seep into you, into your heart, and really make the changes manifest and wisdom to arise. Remember, it's not a one-way street, so you have a role that you're playing, a very, very important one. And this is where many people forget that while listening or reading the suttas, or especially when you're practicing meditation, there's so much that's going on, namely the hindrances, the obstacles that come up in your mind, the tendencies, the old drives that you have. It's crucial for you not to be just pushing them away and expecting them to go away just because you've pushed them away. They're going to keep coming back again and again. You can look at them, gaze upon them, but don't follow their storyline. Just something magical happens when you look at a hindrance, at an obstacle, be it a desire, be it anger, be it or ill will, be it drowsiness, sloth, procrastination, be it restlessness or worry or doubt. When you just turn the camera of your focus, of your sati onto it, it doesn't have a leg to stand on. It just vanishes. And then you go back to what is important. Don't worry, you won't miss a lot because you already would be practicing the Dhamma. Even in those milliseconds, you might turn your gaze not to be focused on the Dhamma per se being shared here, but looking at your hindrance at that moment is still Dhamma. That's when your life can become an extension of your meditation sits. There's no separation between meditation as such and living your life with sati, with sampajanya, with full awareness, full alertness, with responsibility, owning your place in your own life, instead of living it as, series of habitual events, which are not events at all. So this ties in beautifully with today's theme, which is the set of 6 sense spheres, salayatana. That we revisit, because this is a very powerful sutta, because it takes you straight back to what really is happening and what constitutes your own life. The windows with which or through which you look at life and you experience life, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind. This is the world as far as we're concerned. This is Mara as far as we're concerned. This is life as far as we're concerned. And this is the trap of samsara also. So, to understand the 6 sense spheres is to gain cessation from the 6 sense spheres. Just like when we are trying to solve a problem, whether it's a mathematical problem or some type of an issue, we're trying to resolve a matter. The sooner we get to the actual problem, we understand, truly conceptualize, understand, and get a tangible hold of the problem itself, at least half of the problem is solved, just in the mere fact that we have understood it. And that's the problem also in the area of Dhamma, the teachings of Lord Buddha. Oftentimes we presume that we have understood something as deceptive in its simplicity as the Noble Eightfold Path or the Four Noble Truths is often perceived by us as something that, we got it, I understand what it is. So most of it goes ununderstood. There's a lack of understanding because we never gave it a time of day to sit down and really try to grasp the meaning of it and how relevant is it to my life. And that is what is crucial. That's the very first, very crucial step that needs to be taken by each one of us. Otherwise, we're forcing the Dhamma upon us for some reason. So the Dhamma must be relevant to you in your particular, dealing with your own issues of life, the unique circumstances you are undergoing or have been dealing with or will be dealing with, the concerns you have, proclivities, idiosyncrasies, etc. The Dhamma has to be relatable to you. And so long as it is not, then it's going to be something foreign that you're trying to push into your life from an external world. The Dhamma has everything to do with the internal in that sense. So, but one thing that unifies all of us, all beings, is the fact that we have these 6 senses. And today's sutta is it's from the Samyutta Nikaya, which are the connected discourses. This is sutta number 35.101. There's thousands of suttas within this Nikaya, within this collection. And they're full of gems like this one. So it is from the sub-collection that is called Salayatana Vagga Samyutta, and from the Salayatana Samyutta bearing the same name, and from the Salavagga, the section on the sixes. And because the six senses are six in number, so they fit into this category. So the title of this sutta, I translated it as, "They're not yours." They are not yours. What aren't ours? The six senses, which we will discover. So the Pali name for the sutta is Paṭhama Natumhāka Sutta. Na means it's like the antonym, opposite of. They're not yours. Tumha means in Pali you, yours, belonging to you. They don't belong to you. So the first, because there's another one. So today's it will be only on the part one sutta. So SN 35.101. Paṭhama Natumhāka Sutta. They're not yours. So let's begin. Bhikkhus, whatever that is not yours, just give it up and abandon it. For the moment you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. Already basically this solves life's problems as far as, just if you take these two sentences, whatever is not yours, just give it up. Do you know of anyone who owns their body? Owning as in the absolute dominion, having the absolute control and dominion over your body, meaning everything that happens in the body, you have 100% control over. Is there such a being that you know of? No one can qualify, can come even near to that. So Lord Buddha, from the very beginning, he says, whatever you do not own, just give it up and abandon it. And the moment you do abandon it, there's such a relief, happiness, and benefit that is immediate. If you've ever been in a relationship where something happens, and let's say it's a relationship between you and another person, and that other person, let's say, leaves for some reason, or dies, or something happens, and they're no longer in your life, and you have no control over that. Or you have something and it is taken away from you in whatever means, stolen, destroyed, lost, etc. The more you hold on to that, the more you will be forcing yourself to deal with pain and sorrow and the opposite of happiness, meaning suffering, dukkha, which, by the way, puts within it we see through these two sentences, the four noble truths. There's dukkha. And why is there dukkha? Because the person is holding on. So here from the second sentence is when Lord Buddha is saying, when you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit. He just declared the third noble truth. So the sooner that person drops their attachment to that, well, we were so great together, or why did they steal that bottle of mine? Why did they steal my car? Why did I lose my youth? Why did all these things? The sooner I see a separation between myself and that thing, that person, that past, the sooner I will be inviting into my life happiness. Well, I had health. Why did I fall and break my knee? I was so like, why did I have to go through that accident? Everything was fine. Billions of people every day suffer on the face of this earth because we have a tendency of doing just that. So already you see from the beginning of this sutta, Lord Buddha is just locking on to each of our lives, putting the relevancy of Dhamma in giving us the support and relief from dukkha. But let's see what he says further. And what bhikkhus is it that is not yours? So now he's getting to the specifics. The I is not yours and never belonged to you. So just give it up and abandon it. For anyone living in the 21st century, when someone comes and tells you the eyes you have in your skull, they're not yours. So just give them up and abandon it. We think of them as being foolish or senile or something. But let's penetrate deeper into what this means. For the moment you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. We have this sense of identification with our six senses, with what constitutes me, my life, my body. Usually that's what the connotation is. When I say me, I need to have some type of a reference point. You can use your name, you can use your last name, you can use your social class, you can use your education, your skin color, your ethnic background, your language, the country you come from, your social circles, your faith or beliefs, your political beliefs, etc., etc. But there's something deeper. When you get into the body itself, specifically the internal sense spaces, when we say internal sense spaces, we mean the eye, and not just the visible, eye, the organ, but the capacity of perceiving or seeing. And we're going to see the external sense bases, both of which create or come. We have the reference of the salayatana, which are the six sense spheres that I was mentioning. What is a sphere? We're covering now one aspect of the sphere, which happen to be the internal sense bases, namely, in this case, the eye itself. But that doesn't belong to you. Now, can you bring that into the living equation of yours when you're having a difficulty with something to do with the eye? Let's say you saw something that was unpleasant. But you walked away from it. That was like 3 years ago. But you're still thinking about that thing that you saw that was unpleasant. It's probably giving you nightmares. So you see here, we're talking about the attachment that comes, and we superimpose it upon this organ that we're calling the internal sense space of the eye. But let's move forward, because now we're going to see the external sense space. Visible forms which the eyes see are not yours either. So the thing that you saw or you're seeing, that too is not yours. For some reason, we have a little bit better conceptual understanding of that. Yeah, it's over there, so it's not me. But anything that is here in this body is mine. Now, when you go ahead and, like I was saying during your meditation, when you look carefully at that, you see which part of this, which eye. So if I take the eye out, if there's somebody who they do perform surgery and they remove my eye, and put it on the table. Does that mean that I am in this body here and on the table? Because the eye is there, and if it's part of me, then I must be on the table as well. So you see, that whole logic falls apart. So we need to look at not just the visible objects external to us, from us, as, yeah, that's not me. Yeah, I can drop that. I can abandon that, but not the eye. Don't ask me to drop the eye, my attachment to the eye. So you see, they're both standing on flimsy foundation. So Lord Buddha here says, visible forms which the eyes see are not yours either, and in fact never belong to you. So just give them up and abandon them. For the moment you give them up and abandon them, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. Sometimes we go on years talking about some beautiful sunset or sunrise or beautiful thing that we've tasted or seen in this case, because we're going to get to the other senses. Or something that's opposite of beautiful, something repulsive. We're not letting them go. And the more we do not let go of them, we refuse to abandon them, the more they will fester in the mind, the more we will coagulate, more and more things and relationships will be built around that thing, that event. And the more we will believe in it, see it as part of us, who I am, my life, my personality, my pain. Meanwhile, there's no such thing. What is happening is my addition of the glue to put these things together and give them some substantiality. Atta, when it is all anatta, non-substantial. But Lord Buddha doesn't stop at the eye and the visible objects. He goes next to the eye consciousness. He says, eye consciousness, that is the distinction between the eye and visible forms, is not yours and never belonged to you either. When we look carefully at the dependent origination, Paticca, we see how we have a tendency of simplifying and oversimplifying things, and then we just tape this label on it and say, that's my experience, this is it, and we end the discussion there. But if our journey is about understanding and gaining wisdom, then we must look at things with a little bit more scrutiny. For example, consciousness, remember, when you have the internal sense sphere, let's say the eye, and then you have its object, which is the visible object, the thing that is to be seen, captured, the light rays basically being picked up by this organ, if you want to think of it like that, also works. But as a result of these distinct two things happening, there arises eye consciousness. Now, what we do normally, we stick a label on that and we call it consciousness, and we count that as 3. 1, 2, and that would be 3. Meanwhile, there isn't that. There isn't a third item, basically. The very distinction that we made, we basically are solidifying 1, the eye, solidifying 2, the object, and we're solidifying this thing called consciousness. There's a personification of it that's happening, a distinction, which is a result of ignorance. But we're not going to stop there, because Lord Buddha says, just give it up and abandon it. Because why is it based on ignorance, one might ask? A very valid question, by the way. It is a problem. It is based on ignorance, basically. Hence, it will be a problem. It is a problem because of what ensues as a result. Because of that, we're going to see how consciousness leads us eventually to have a feeling which will be seen as something tangible, as existentially so real, so visceral, so very much part of us and me in my life at this point in time, therefore undeniably real, compelling me to do something, specifically to be engaging in karma, action, meaning intentionally act on it. And this is why ignorance is very dangerous. Ignorance is not something passive. Ignorance is the very first of the Paticca-samuppada, the dependent origination links, the 12 links. So ignorance is the very major problem. Because of ignorance, there is dukkha, as I was saying in the beginning. Because ignorance takes form of action. And when you have ignorance in action, where you're acting the ignorance, it's in a dynamic form, then you are building sankharas. Sankharas are not the results of past actions only. We are making new sankharas all the time, so long as we are functioning with ignorance. So ignorance in action equals sankhara. And that is very bad news. So you see the responsibility that must be held. And why Lord Buddha kept on insisting that we have this very alert, sustainably present, aware guard, sangvara, the restraint, at each of these 6 gates. So we're still on the first gate. So let's continue. For the moment you give it up, meaning the I consciousness, and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. Now, because you have I consciousness, the meeting of the 3, Lord Buddha says in the Cacakka Sutta, from the Majjhima Nikaya, 148, then what happens is the meeting of the 3 brings forth eye contact, phassa. Eye contact that manifests due to eye consciousness is not yours and never belonged to you either. Just give it up and abandon it. For the moment you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. Now, in another sutta we've covered either a month ago or a few weeks ago, or maybe earlier, we saw how Venerable Sariputta was saying, it's not enough to have a working eye, or just an eye. It has to be working eye. And then the eye has to be looking at an object, which, by the way, has to be visible. But that's not enough to establish eye consciousness. You could still not see it, even if you're looking at it with a healthy eye. The attention must be there, right? So manasikara comes in. And that is one of the key ways that we can extricate, remove the ignorance bit out. And the way to do that is to stop it at, remember the 2 distinctions I was referring to, the I and the object? If you could just leave it at that, Okay, that's an object. That's an object. I don't have to get into the story of building it. Well, of course I have a consciousness, I consciousness, that's how I saw it. There was a contact. Okay, the contact, let's stop it at that. Let's stop it at that. But most of us do not have our sati as speedy as it should be, as strong as it should be, to capture it at that moment of eye contact. We go to the next phase. We take it in. We gulp that bait. We gulp it. We swallow it. And what is that second step or next phase? Feeling, eye feeling. And Lord Buddha continues, and whatever kind of feeling that is triggered due to the eye contact being made as its condition, whether lovely or painful or neutral, that too is not yours. Lord Buddha is saying there's hope for you. There's still some hope. Just see, is it enjoyable, lovely, delightful feeling? Or is it a painful, repulsive, disgusting, resentful, ugly, a boring feeling? Or is it a neutral feeling? Can you distinguish? Again, this necessitates the presence of sati to be specifically fast enough to catch it at the moment where there is that contact spark taking place between the eye and the visible object. Instead of, wow, that's a very handsome person, a beautiful woman, a handsome man, an ugly thing, what is that? Oh, that doesn't do anything for me. It's like, it's just a blank gray or white wall. So I don't have any feelings towards that. That's a neutral feeling. But it's a feeling. Can you stop at that moment? Can you see it and capture it as exactly as what it is without adding any other flavors to it? For the moment you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. In so many suttas, Lord Buddha and the Arahants refer to this as the normal state of an Arahant. What a lovely state to be in, right? Based on what we're reading. So many people have thought or still conclude to this day or have reached that quote unquote position or understanding that Lord Buddha always stayed in the Arahatta Phala, the state of Arahant, the fruition stage of an Arahant. And he was an Arahant, Lord Buddha. His Arahantship and another person's Arahantship are Arahantship. There's no distinction. But he, on top of that, he had the quality of a Buddha, the 10 powers, the special powers that he had worked on for eons and eons to perfect. But as far as his Arahantship is concerned, he was the same as any other Arahant, because there's only one kind of awakening, one Nibbana, ultimately. So many people misconstrue or have reached that wrong conclusion that Lord Buddha always was in the state of Arahantship, and that is not true, which basically would insinuate that he's always blissed out, living beyond the six senses. And that's not the case. Never been the case, unless he went into Arahatta Phala when he was in meditation. Otherwise, in the discourses that he would give, the thousands of discourses, he still had his eyes, he still had his ears, his nose, his tongue, his body, his mind. And he was seeing visible objects. He was hearing sounds, audible sounds. He was tasting food. His body was touching surfaces, tactile objects. So he knew what the smooth surface was compared to a rough surface. When insects would bite him, let's say a mosquito, he would feel that. Or when he would have his backaches, severe backaches, he would feel that. That's the body making contact. Now, what happened at that moment of contact and everyone else who is not an arahant, that is the big, huge difference. And that is the invitation that we're hearing here from Lord Buddha. To practice, to get the mind, the sati, to be so sharp that it brings about sense of powerful yoniso manasikara. Because sooner or later, if you're practicing sila, samadhi, panya, your sati will take you to yoniso manasikara. Yoniso manasikara is wise, radical attention. You're putting your attention at the point of origin. Yoni means the womb of life, in a sense, where contact is happening. That is it, the point of origin, contact itself. So can your sati be sharp enough to, poof, like a laser, hit that spark right there the moment that it happens? It's like Bhante Nyanananda gives the example of the tennis, table tennis. And he says, imagine your opponent is Mara and he's hitting you with a different serve every single minute or second. How fast can you respond to his serve without letting the ball bounce on the table? Think of that serving of Mara, of the ping pong balls, as the six senses picking up and giving you different impressions, different contacts happening. That's why we practice walking meditation. That's why we practice awareness, sati and sampajanya together in everything that you do, not just when you're sitting to meditate for 1, 2, 3 hours straight. But what happens in between, when you're tossing and turning in bed, when you're picking up your plate and your utensils and you're getting up? Are you aware of the different contacts that are coming and knocking on your sense doors? And not turning them into feelings. Just dropping it at that point of contact and just, that's it. They have no access beyond that. Their security clearance doesn't cover. They don't have access to your heart. They don't have enough clearance, as they say in the military, I think. You don't have high enough of a security clearance to get in, to have access, to jolt and agitate the mind. They can only go so far as the six senses can bring, meaning the eye could give you the visible object. Okay, there is this, and then the eye consciousness picked it up, and boom, there's the contact. Okay, I know it's red. Let's move on. Oh, it's a beautiful red. Look at that. It's delicious red. It's like this. Oh, it reminds me of that time when I was here, or my grandmother used to have this thing, or and then now you're feeling things. You're stuck in Papancha land. And this is how we keep ourselves in samsara. No one else keeps us in samsara, in these cycles of rebirth. No one else is responsible for our pain, ultimately, in going from birth to birth, birth to birth, death to death, death to death, from womb to womb. No one else is responsible other than ourselves. So this is when we give attention where it is supposed to be given, meaning kamma, our actions. Today we live in a world where kamma is, especially in the Dhamma field, nobody's talking about kamma for some reason. Everybody is into social events, social things, socially aware things, help the planet, help the climate, and Buddhists are, they're as influenced as everyone else. There's nothing special in that, aspect. So long as they're following the herd, nobody's talking about kamma. And when you don't talk about kamma, when you don't pick it apart, understand what kamma is, and how is it that Lord Buddha said cetana, intention, creates kamma. So it's all about me, not your intention. I am intending to do this, which means I am the inheritor of my karma. And my karma is going to drag me from life to life, from this life to hell. And that's where many people, many among us will end up after this life is over, so long as we don't do something about it. Meaning, really put our attention where it's supposed to go, specifically on the role of karma, our actions. See, the eye, like the ears and the nose and the tongue and the body and the mind, they're the results of our past karma. All that we've done as an outcome of that, the vipakas, you can call it, the fruits of it, they brought us in our decisions, basically, the intention, not someone just punishing or things like that. No, it's our actions that have brought us these six senses. Sometimes they work as good as someone else's, sometimes they don't. So we don't blame anyone else for having these six senses, not even our parents. Because our karma brought us to our parents, even if we don't like them or we like them. Usually the chances is we don't like the parents, right? And we blame them. Well, actually, they had nothing to do with it. Ultimately, it's our choice, meaning the intentionality. So similar, when the choices that I'm making, the intentionally committed actions, are dictated by ignorance, remember the ignorance? Ignorance in action, I mentioned how it is all sankhara. The sankhara is the reason why you end up in the cycles of rebirth. That's why they need to be destroyed. And the only way you destroy it is through the application of sati with yoniso manasikara, wise radical attention, looking at each of these contexts, which keep you, bring you, and place you in charge of your life. You see with the heart, you see with a clear mind, and it becomes clearer and clearer because, as Lord Buddha says, the heart is luminous, bhikkhus, he says. Abhasara bhikkave chittam. But it's clouded by all these corruptions. What is corruption? Ignorance. Ignorance acted out in the form of sankharas, which leads us to make wrong actions, kamma. This is the problem. So it's not some analysis that we're doing here by looking at the phases of the six sense spheres, how they're moving and becoming fast enough only. No, there is the ethical, moral, virtue-based action that needs to be taken by us. That's why in this culture where we neglect kamma, what that also means already is that virtue is tossed out the window. And that's also what we are seeing in the world, including in the lack of, insisting on the importance of maintaining a virtuous life within the Dhammic circles. Not enough talk is being, not enough action is being done within Buddhist circles on the importance of maintaining virtue. We're outside directed. That's why I said the other day how today's Dhamma that is being promulgated in circles, in temples, in monasteries even, has very little to do, if any, with the teachings of Lord Buddha that he taught 2,600 years ago. So now, with going over these suttas, we are taking it back, taking charge, of our life and placing the Dhamma where it is. It has always been. The foundation, Sila, Samadhi, Panya. Sila is number one, but it needs Samadhi to take us to wisdom. That's why these things cannot be dissected from each other. They cannot be torn apart from each other. They are a unit. That's why Dhamma, in studying the Dhamma, words of Lord Buddha, is not an intellectual affair. I am still yet to see a philosopher who became an arahant. You will not see that. Now we get to the second sense base. The ear is not yours and never belonged to you. Just give it up and abandon it. For the moment you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. Audible sounds which the ears hear are not yours either, and in fact, never belong to you. So just give them up and abandon them. For the moment you give them up and abandon them, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. Imagine you're trying to fall asleep to get some rest at night after a long day's work, and you know your body needs the rest. For most people, when you hear neighbors fighting, dogs barking, or things of that sort in the quiet of the night, it jolts you. It keeps you at least awake if it's ongoing. Is any part of it yours? Can you control? Do you have dominion, as I was mentioning about the eyes and what you see? The ears are even worse, because with the eyes, you can at least hide your eyes, cover blindfold, but with the ears, even if you get earplugs, there's this company, I'm not going to name their name, but it's well known apparently around the world that they make very good earplugs. But because of my flight and all these things, I tried to put earplugs, but they're very uncomfortable. So I saw these and I had them. I tried them once or twice. They didn't work. But ultimately, even the best of the best earplugs will not work. Because I can't control the dogs barking over there. I can't control the neighbors yelling over there. But I can apply the principles that Lord Buddha gave me in addressing the salayatana, the six sense bases. I can turn that into a lesson in Dhamma at past midnight. All of a sudden, I'm on a retreat. As I'm observing very carefully, meticulously, what's happening. The ears, the sounds, ear consciousness, and boom, I'm observing now closer and closer this thing called ear contact. And see how fast would it turn into an ear feeling. And if it's past that point, then can I detect that feeling, whether it is a pleasurable, painful, or neutral feeling? Still, I have a chance. But all throughout, I am honing in the skill of sati. This is the mindset that Lord Buddha is encouraging in each of us with these teachings. Ear consciousness, that is the distinction between the ear and audible sounds, is not yours and never belonged to you either. So just give it up and abandon it. For the moment you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. Ear contact that manifests due to ear consciousness is not yours and never belonged to you either. So just give it up and abandon it. For the moment you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. Now, practice makes perfect. Remember, we make the mistake of comparing ourselves to the Arya Savakas, to the noble disciples, to the Arahants. And sometimes, if not always, at least for some part of it, it's not fair. Okay, we don't know the amount of hardship that they had to undergo to train themselves. That's why the person is leaving a household life. Because the energy now, instead of running after the children, running after the business, running after the empire, or worrying about what am I going to eat today or going to make today, all that energy is now being funneled into looking more and more carefully at life as it is unfolding in front of his nose, in front of his ears, eyes, etc. And that's a full-time job. in one of my, I forgot where it was, somebody asked me, not a Buddhist, and they weren't being disrespectful, but they asked something like, when they asked me what, pointed at me, and they said, what are you? And so I told them, I'm a Buddhist monk, I'm a bhikkhu. And they said, for how long? And I said, how many years? Or he said, no. Do you basically remove the monk hat, basically, or, during the day, do you stop being a monk? Do you take a time out from being a monk? I giggled because I didn't know how to respond. And I said, there's no such thing. Do you stop breathing? I asked him in return. And he said, no. And I said, that's how it is. It's a full-time job. Job, not in the sense of it's a chore, but no, but it's intense. It's a choice. It's a choice that these bhikkhus have made. And they are perfect examples for us to see that if they did it, we can too. And don't think that, oh, you have to be a monk either. I'm not saying that either. Why or how do I, what am I basing that on now? I'm basing it on the fact that so many lay disciples who were very much engaged in lay life, I mean, businessmen, businesswomen, like in the case of Visakha, the multi-billionaire, in those, if you had brought her wealth today's terms, she would be a multi-billionaire. They would conduct business and still be living according to the Dhamma. Like Hattaka of Alavi or Chitta. They were doing this. They were observing contact as it's happening. So please don't put it in that crystal container and saying, well, that's only for special beings, not for me. I don't think I could do that. There's no such thing. If you have a mind, if your heart has brought you to the Dhamma, and if the Dhamma has found you, you have every right, you have every possibility to awaken in this very body of yours that you are occupying now. And what a wonderful gift the Lord Buddha has given us. And whatever kind of feeling that is triggered due to the ear contact being made as its condition, whether lovely or painful or neutral, that too is not yours and never belonged to you either. So just give it up and abandon it. For the moment you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. So the moment, if you want to explain the Four Noble Truths to someone, have them hold something heavy. Okay? And then say, could you drop it? Let go of it. Maybe it could be something like a rope that's holding on something and they're pulling on it, and ask them to stop it, to just like let it go. And then ask them immediately, how does it feel now compared to when you were holding it? They're going to say, oh, that was a relief. My muscles aren't sore as much as they were because now it's relaxed. There you go. That's the third noble truth. They let go of pain and sorrow and suffering. Dukkha is released. And remember, no one releases the dukkha. And every moment that you are bringing your attention back to the point of contact and not going on a ride with what happens after contact, what you're doing is you're creating the opportunity for Nibbana to happen. You're making it more possible for Nibbana to happen sooner than later. You're creating windows of opportunities for yourself to have many small Nibbanas. Because Nibbana just doesn't happen out of the blue when you've never had equanimity in your heart, in your mind, when you've never had joy in your heart. It doesn't happen like all of a sudden this thing falls on you. This shower, like, powerful waterfall, all of a sudden out of the blue, when you've never experienced anything, any semblance of that before. Not at all. It will never happen like that. This path is not lying to you. It delivers before it delivers. Nibbana, before it happens, gives you many glimpses. The mind has many, 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 many glimpses of it. And that's why it happens in stages usually. That's why the person has experience of stream winning. When they enter the stream, they become a totally different person. But they know they're not arahants yet. But they know they can never be the previous version of themselves either. They're ready to die for that because they cannot be otherwise than what they are now. And next stage would be when they become a sakadagam, who wants to return, and then anagam, a non-return, and then finally an arahant. Already the mind has become so refined, the heart has become so pure. And that's why it's sad when I hear people talking about attainments and then you look at their lives, there's no virtue. There's strong attachment to I, to titles, to positions, to classes. There's no nibbana. They're so far away from it. So what this is saying, the moment you are able to see that you can stop it, you can see it rather. When you're seeing each of these points of contact, that will open up to a moment of mini nibbana. That is what I am claiming here. Okay? I'm not just claiming it, it's in the text as well. Excuse me. Now we get to the nose. The nose is not yours and never belonged to you. So just give it up and abandon it. For the moment you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. Odors which the nose smells are not yours either, and in fact, never belong to you. Just like in the case of the sight, visible objects, the sounds of the ear. So just give them up and abandon them. For the moment you give them up and abandon them, that you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. Nose consciousness, that is the distinction between the nose and odors, is not yours and never belonged to you either. So just give it up and abandon it. For the moment you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. Nose contact that manifests due to the nose consciousness is not yours and never belonged to you either. So just give it up and abandon it. For the moment you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. And whatever kind of feeling that is triggered due to the nose contact being made as its condition, whether lovely or painful or neutral, that too is not yours and never belonged to you either. So just give it up and abandon it. For the moment you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. It's the same formula, but please don't brush it off. Don't become absent-minded to what is being said. Because each of these senses, internal sense bases or sense organs, can take you to nibbana or can keep you in samsara. You choose. It might not be through the eyes that you see the contact being made. It might be through some other sense. It could be the body. Just at that right moment when you hit the sweet spot where your sati is so sharp, and this is where your practice will take you. At that moment, perhaps it would be the way that your skin touches a surface. Body consciousness, body contact. At that moment, if you are present, that could be your entry point into nibbana even, I will dare say. Or it could be the sound. So each of these doorways are doorways or gateways to nibbana. It could be the tongue. It could be the way you're tasting a grain of rice or a certain type of food that you like. instead of being lost in the flavor of the food, can you back up a little bit and see, just retroactively, just see, rewind the tape in your mind, just see. Okay, there's the tongue, there's the flavor, and there's the consciousness, which gives me the opportunity to see and feel the contact of the taste. Ah, I see you. Before it turns to, oh, that's my favorite tea, or that's my favorite dish or something. So please don't undervalue any of these senses, because you will be surprised. As your practice advances, it deepens, you might not be able to see the contact from a certain familiar sense base, but from one that is less familiar or less acquainted with. So, flavors which the tongue tastes are not yours either, and in fact, never belong to you. So just give them up and abandon them. For the moment you give them up and abandon them, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. Tongue consciousness, that is the distinction between the tongue and flavors, is not yours and never belong to you either. So just give it up and abandon it. For the moment you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. Tongue contact that manifests due to tongue consciousness is not yours and never belong to you either. So just give it up and abandon it. For the moment you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. And whatever kind of feeling that is triggered due to the tongue contact being made as its condition, whether lovely or painful or neutral, that too is not yours and never belonged to you either. So the flavor, it might be, something like a sweet tasting fruit that you love, or it might be bitter gourd or something, or something that has gone bad and you accidentally tasted it. It's like, ugh. Before it went into a state of ugh, it made contact. There's nothing wrong if you catch it at the tail end of the and then you bring your attention back to the point of contact. That's okay. We're training. Remember, this is training like it is with your precepts. It's not a do or die mentality. It's not either or, all or nothing. It's not like that. This is a training. You have to be compassionate with yourself, tolerant, but persistent. Persistency, persistence, all throughout. And that is what sati is. You bring your attention back, you bring it back. And whatever kind of feeling that is triggered due to the tongue contact being made as its condition, whether lovely or painful or neutral, that too is not yours and never belonged to you either. So just give it up and abandon it. For the moment you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. The physical body is not yours and never belonged to you. So just give it up and abandon it. For the moment you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. Even the body. Tactile objects which the body touches are not yours either, and in fact never belong to you. So just give them up and abandon them. For the moment you give them up and abandon them, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. These are the things that you're touching. There are secret likes and dislikes, because the skin happens to be the largest or biggest organ, as we learned in biology. It's always in contact with something. The eyes are not always in contact, right? As much as the body is, the skin is specifically. So what the mind does, it goes into silent mode. It's like, yeah, I'm just going to be ignorant of it. I'm just going to choose to be absolutely indifferent to it, unless it's really outstanding, unless it's a very, very sharp object piercing me or scratching me, or very smooth like satin, or something cold I'm touching, or something hot. Otherwise, I'm not interested. No, this is why neutral feeling is such a powerful feeling. It's the majority of the feelings we have, actually. They are neutral feeling. Painful and pleasant feelings are, in fact, the two extremes of feelings, and they are the minority of feelings. The majority of the feeling type that we have is, in fact, the neutral feeling, which, by the way, we are oblivious to. We've chosen, the mind has chosen to be oblivious to. That's why we need to bring sati into everything. That's another reason why you're practicing walking meditation, breathing meditation, metta meditation, to observe the state of the heart moving. When it moves from fluctuates between metta and maybe even dislike, or the dead zone where it doesn't feel anything. Well, your job is to catch that, to see that, and then reignite it with metta. Body contact that manifests due to body consciousness is not yours and never belonged to you. So just give it up and abandon it. For the moment you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. And whatever kind of feeling that is triggered due to the body contact being made as its condition, whether lovely or painful or neutral, that too is not yours and never belonged to you either. So just give it up and abandon it. For the moment you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. The mind is not yours. Now, this is the sixth organ, sense space. This is the most important one, as Lord Buddha and the Arahants would say, because this is where they all come together. They all have to pass through the mind. And the eye might have seen it 3-4 months ago, decades ago, but guess who is bringing it into the picture? Even though the eyes aren't seeing them. But the mind's eye is seeing it. Who? The mind is seeing it. It's replaying that tape, which was based on a perception that occurred at one point. Maybe it took 4 seconds of my life. But now I'm dwelling on it for 40 years straight after the fact. So the mind is the big one, the big culprit in keeping us in ignorance. So just give it up and abandon it. For the moment you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. Mental objects such as thoughts, ideas, or concepts which the mind cognizes or thinks about are not yours either, and in fact never belong to you. Ideas. How many times have you met people, or including yourself maybe, where you saw yourself as a conglomeration, as a unification, as a collection of your ideas and beliefs? People are killing each other today in the world for their own ideologies, thoughts, concepts, because they take them, those things, those concepts, as their reality. They go neck and neck, they start fighting and they throw things, they kill each other because of the concepts that they have in there, that they at one point or another they selected. I like this concept. In fact, it's my concept. Meanwhile, Lord Buddha says it's not yours. There was a time where it didn't exist in you. You didn't know about it. You didn't understand what it is, what it was. You adopted it. So just give them up and abandon them. For the moment you give them up and abandon them, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. Mind consciousness, that is the distinction between the mind and mental objects, is not yours and never belonged to you either. So just give it up and abandon it. For the moment you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. Mind contact that manifests due to mind consciousness is not yours and never belonged to you either. So just give it up and abandon it. For the moment you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. And this is where real vipassana takes place, takes shape. You're watching, you're observing, you're alert. And this is another reason why it's called penetrative insight. You're penetrating. Why? Because you're seeing through the delusion. Because you might be sitting there with your eyes closed in meditation in a room that's dark, let's say, or barely lit. And let's say you're surrounded by nature or no noise, external noises that are disruptive, and there's not anything you're touching, let's say. You get the drift with the other sense organs. But when it comes to the mind, well, now that is the playground of the 5 hindrances. How are you seeing the hindrances? This is where your Dhammanupassana and Chittanupassana part of the 2 aspects of the Satipatthana come into play, the 4 bases of mindfulness practice. When you're seeing the different states that the heart goes through, the chitta, and especially when you start noticing the 5 aggregates, the 5 hindrances, you start noticing, okay, I'm kind of jolted here. I'm not as stable. So that means the hindrance of restlessness is there, right? Uddhacca is there. Or I am remorseful, or I'm dwelling on self-blame because I think I might have broken a precept. So that is kukucca, right? And then, or doubt, vicissitudes is up. And it's churning in me, and I'm all over the place. So sati is the thing. So you're using now the 5 spiritual faculties, right? Indriya, pancha indriya, and you're seeing sati, and sati sees this and quickly lets wisdom know about it, right? One aspect of the 5 spiritual faculties, as well as the 7 factors of awakening. The first is sati, right? And next to it is what? Dhamma vichaya. So Dhamma vichaya is application of wisdom, and it sees, oh, okay, I see it's restlessness. I can't, that means I need to pull back on virya, which is energy. The more energy I put in, that means I'm going to get more and more restless. It's like fanning with the bellows to get the fire going. Adding more energy is like putting more air in there. It will turn it into a bigger and bigger flame. So I need to tone things down. Who gave you the word? Who let you know about what's going on? Sati. And because you have Dhamma Vichaya, which is wisdom, you're now going to work with the other aspects of the 7 factors of awakening, which means you're going to invite tranquility of mind. Passaddhi. Okay, it starts cooling things down for you. And then slowly you start experiencing the depth of samadhi. And because there's samadhi, you have upekkha soon enough. And upekkha is the other aspect of wisdom. It balances everything. So this is an aspect of applying Dhammanupassana, the 4th aspect of Satipatthana. So you see how while you're sitting in meditation, you're applying the Satipatthana while you're doing your vipassana in a soft, comfortable, unagitated state, without strife, without fighting yourself, which what people irresponsibly have been advocating vipassana to be, to their own detriment, because misrepresenting the Dhamma will take a person to the depths of hell. I don't care if they are Bhikkhu so-and-so, Sayadaw so-and-so, Ajahn so-and-so, Bhante so-and-so. It doesn't matter. You misrepresent the Dhamma of Lord Buddha, you will go to hell. It's as simple as that. That's why we need to remind ourselves of the Alagaddupama Sutta that Lord Buddha uses as an example, as a demonstration of this, using that metaphor of the vicious, venomous water snake. He says, you do not hold on to the water snake, which is so venomous, from its tail. You hold on to it. If you want to grab it, grab it by the head. And if you can't, don't touch the snake. So if you're going to touch the Dhamma, you better make sure that you're touching it, holding it from the head. That means you need to understand what it is. You need to practice and apply it in your life and taste the fruits of it before you open your mouth. and not grab hold of its tail, because guess what it will do? It will turn its head and bite you, as evidenced by the depths of ignorance that will over-dominate your life and drag you to the depths of hell. Countless are the bhikkhus and monastics over the centuries that are crowding up the hell realm. Countless. So, this practice is all about truth. It's all about the experience of Nibbana, the truth that Lord Buddha and the Arya Savakas themselves have tasted. They came from that position. And here is, every time you sit to meditate, that is where you are going and taking refuge in yourself. In how often you are maintaining your sati, in how often you are maintaining your sila, in how genuinely you're practicing your bhavana, your cultivation of mind. That is what is your true refuge, because that is the only place that Nibbana is going to manifest in your heart. Nowhere else. How you're living it, how you're applying these teachings. And whatever kind of feeling that is triggered due to the mind contact being made as its condition, whether lovely or painful or neutral, that too is not yours and never belonged to you either. So just give it up and abandon it. For the moment you give it up and abandon it, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. Imagine, bhikkhus, that there were people who came by to this Jeta's park and started to collect dry grass, leaves, twigs, and branches of trees to do with them whatever they wanted, whether to burn them or take them away. Now, in witnessing this, would you then start thinking to yourselves, these lay people have come to collect us in order to burn us or to carry us off with them to do whatever they want with us? Would you think like that? No, Bhante. And what is the reason for us not to be thinking like this? It is because, Bhante, whatever heap of material those people are collecting is neither ourselves nor in any way belonging to us, because they're just collecting twigs. So Lord Buddha is using such a blatant, mundane example, metaphor, from the area around them, because they're sitting there in Jeta's park, and it's a lovely park. Today it's only a mere old tiny little semblance of what it used to be. But even today, when you go to the park and you sit under the trees, you see these branches that fall and leaves and dry leaves. So you can almost imagine that Lord Buddha just looked at the ground around them, and the bhikkhus are sitting around him on the grass, and he says, "Are these you? Are these you? Do you identify with these?" And he said, "No." In just the same way, because you must be reflecting as you carefully consider that the I is not yours and never belonged to you. So he goes into the whole section that we already went over, which I'm not going to do. I'll just read the first portion of the sentence of each, because these are very, very important for you to read. That's why they're available. As I've said many times, they're available on the website, mindrelease.com, PDF. Please print them out or have them in front of you and go reading the sections and then sit with them in meditation, either listening through this recording, let's say, or even better, the sutta. It will deepen your practice, I promise. The ear is not yours and never belonged to you. The nose is not yours and never belonged to you. The tongue is not yours and never belonged to you. The physical body is not yours and never belonged to you. And the mind is not yours and never belonged to you. And whatever kind of feeling that is triggered due to these sense organs being made as its condition, whether lovely or painful or neutral, that too is not yours and never belonged to you either. So just give them up and abandon them. For the moment you give them up and abandon them, you will gain much happiness and benefit as a result. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. As You can tell it's a beautiful sutta. It's quite marvelous, and it's such a treasure, and we're so fortunate, so fortunate that we have these suttas, discourses available in one form or another, and that my task is to make them available to all of us by retranslating them using a language that is relatable for us, something that is contextually rich as it was intended. These are not mere words. They are words in the backdrop of heavy duty context, history, families, friendships, a relationship between a teacher and a disciple, a relationship between other disciples, other students. All those dynamics need to be there in the text that we're reading today. And that is my task, to try my best to make that come alive, and so that you can take them and apply them into your lives and gain the fruits that Lord Buddha intended for you to be gaining in your life. Because you've traveled enough, I think, in samsara. I believe that you've seen enough suffering in samsara. Any thoughts, questions, comments? Okay, let us transfer some merits. Akasatva chabumata devanagamahiddhika punyantam anumoditva chinam rakhantu lokasasa. Akasatva chabumata devanagamahiddhika punyantam anumoditva chinam rakhantu desanam. Akasatva chabumata devanagamahiddhika punyantam anumoditva chinam rakhantu mam paranti. Sadhu, sadhu. May the blessings of the Triple Gem be with you all and your loved ones. And may your progress continue. And may you experience more and more joy in your hearts. And may the light of Dhamma shine beautifully, as it did with the audience and this time in your life. Until next time, Sukhihot.